Right. We are live. If you are listening to this on the podcast, hello, welcome.
Welcome.
We hope you at least you're listening to it.
We're listening
What
and
was it
talking.
that? What's that quote? Is it if a tree falls in a forest and no
Yeah.
one hears it? I don't know what the end of that is.
No, if the tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise?
And if no one hears it, is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
So if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, does it make a noise? Interesting. Which is, and then so this is just a bit of a complete tangent at the beginning here, because it also then reminds me of my physics time as a physicist around. I'm going to go totally. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle,
Right.
which essentially means that the act of measuring something or sensing something affects the thing.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so, yes, I don't know what that. Maybe hearing the tree actually made it fall over.
Hearing the thing made it fall over. Okay. Good. So hearing the podcast
Yes, will make
makes
it, all fall over.
better.
Oh, that was just a random. Don't know where that came from. Yeah, well, we aren't. Well, I don't believe we are alone anymore. There are people actually listening to us, which is going to affect what we say, which is a bit Heisenbergy. We have Tristan and Nick, I think, joining us. Say hi, Tristan. Hi, Nick. I hope you can just say hello in the chat if you're able to. If you are driving or operating heavy machinery, just nod, and we will sense that.
And if you're listening on the podcast, don't say anything in the chat because there isn't chat and we're not listening. And we're not listening, then we're not listening.
Exactly. And so all of your thoughts and tirades and criticisms and objections will just go into the ether.
It's very difficult, this. Now I feel sort of conflicted and confused to people who are listening now, people who are not listening, me not listening later. This is like a sort of mess.
In the quantum world, that's called a quantum superposition, where you are both dead and alive. You are Schrodinger's cat. You don't know
right.
Are people listening or not listening.
Meow.
See, we gone quantum today. Because it's all about perception.
There we go. Nice.
Like
that was like a David Frostian segue.
I've been practicing. It's taken 2 years of doing live webinars to work out how to make the most convoluted segue ever. But yeah, so today, how do we bring it all together? How do we bring trees falling down and quantum mechanics and Heisenberg and viewers and non-viewers and listeners and non-listeners and value-based pricing?
Boom.
One thing, we value your time. Thank you, Tristan, Nick, and Francis for joining us this morning. We hope by the end of this, if you don't get value from our knowledge, you will get value from our witterings and just a little bit of amusement. Put a smile on your face on this bright. Well, it's not so bright. It was bright a bit. There was sun. 1st of December.
Shit.
Punch, first day of the month, Ben, no return. Exactly.
Actually, in the excitement of the first day of Advent calendars today, we didn't. It's probably the first month of the year. The morning doesn't descend into the boys fighting over who basically inflicted the first punch. Distracted by chocolate, essentially.
Oh, well done. Yeah, we are you? So you let them have chocolate first thing in the morning?
What, me or them?
Them.
Them. Well, one of them did. The other one decided to use all his pocket money or birthday money or something to buy his advent calendar is a football cards advent calendar.
Oh,
so he doesn't get chocolate. He gets football cards and he bought it himself. Double bonus. The other one, I don't even know if he had his chocolate or if he has the promise of chocolate.
So, all right, so there's two things there. First, on the chocolate thing, I'm total judgmental parent there, Ben. Chocolate in the morning is terrible. And then secondly, on the buying your own advent card, I feel there's an episode here about kids and money.
Yeah,
Maybe
definitely.
We can talk about how are we talking to our children or or behaving with money with our children, and what do we think that means with their relationships or potential future relationships with money?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. That's one to queue up on the Christmas list.
It's on there, on the hit parade.
Hit parade. So today, in summary, this is the third part of a 3-part series where we've been kind of exploring the pros and cons and differences between time-based, project-based, and value-based pricing. When it came to time-based pricing, there's this real security or familiarity with that approach that we talked about, that helps customers feel a sense of comfort when they're buying something. It feels like pay as you go, pay what you use type approach, and how that on one hand makes it easier for them, but on another hand, as a supplier, that can either affect your profit margin because of feeling like your profit margin could sort of like make it uncertain in terms of how much time are you going to work on something and how much work. And then it can also be difficult in terms of deciding how long is a project supposed to be, and that also for a client, how long am I allowed to, or how long is this person supposed to be working on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an issue there. I think project-based pricing, where I thought we came to was this idea of like, it's nearly like it's trying to do value-based pricing, but it's essentially itemized hourly-based pricing. It's like, all right, this is a shopping list. This guy is going to work X hours. This girl's going to work X hours. This other person's going to work X hours. We add them all up. That's how much you're going to pay. There's, again, this feeling of certainty. This for the customer, I know how much I'm going to pay. But on the supplier side, there's a potential hit if that's a fixed amount and you're not going to budge. Even if it isn't a fixed amount, at some point you're going to have a difficult conversation saying, okay, we need more time. And then how do you decide how much extra time? And, there's a whole gamut of conversations there. Today, we are going to tackle this idea of value-based pricing, which we believe is, well, I think, having learned from Ben, this is where you really want to be. It isn't the easiest approach, but I think it's the approach where there is a much clearer potential for not only a win-win, but a really big win for both parties. But it takes some effort. We're going to explore that. So yeah, on this, I was wondering if we start off with, I don't think many people do. Most people don't follow this approach. I think most people do the time-based or the project-based, as I understand it. And I don't know, Ben, do you have any thoughts, or from talking to people that you worked with, particularly on your one-to-one coaching and some of the group programs that you do, is there a resistance or a difficulty? Is there any major roadblock to people just even trying to start to work with this properly, if that makes sense? Really embrace the value-based approach.
Is there a roadblock? Yes, and it's massive. I think there are many blocks and obstacles which sort of stop people kind of dabbling with this. I guess kind of a few things to say. One, just in kind of reference to what you're sort of saying there, that that this is the best route, and I think probably one sort of qualification around that is, like all of these things, like time, like project, like value, kind of the way we sort of explored, there are kind of pros and cons to both, actually. And the same with value pricing. There are pros and cons to it. It's not that it is necessarily the best. It's going to be right for some people. It is undoubtedly going to be the most profitable. And so, depending on, what the rest of your work looks like, or how you structure your time, or what you might do, if there is a kind of a need, a kind of desire to kind of increase profit, whether it's from certain clients, from kind of all clients, whether there's a need to earn more, this all kind of links to what your motivation is for sorting out your money. It's undoubted that value pricing is the route to the most profitable. So in terms of kind of, sort of positives around it, that is kind of unavoidably true, because like we were saying, kind of pricing by time is convenient. And what clients want to do is they want to remove ambiguity and uncertainty, because buying anything is full of ambiguity and uncertainty. So we're always keen to remove that whenever you're buying anything. So this kind of thing of a fixed sort of price, i.e. my time costs this, people go, okay, that feels convenient, but as you sort of acknowledge, basically it ultimately becomes an open-ended thing, and that just adds more uncertainty. The project pricing thing is probably the most convenient for a client because they get the value of the kind of fixed price, but you as the supplier effectively carry the kind of cost of that unless you have the difficult conversation of kind of cracking it open. So the kind of value pricing thing, is the best way of kind of earning, sort of increasing the profit from what you do. But in terms of to your question around kind of roadblocks, yes, there are kind of many roadblocks because, as you alluded to in the explanation, value pricing is hard. And actually at the heart of value pricing is this idea that value is subjective. So the only person who really can decide what the value of something is your client. And so that, in terms of the roadblock thing, is not just about the challenge of the process of getting there, but is also just comes into the definition of value pricing. What is value pricing? Given that value pricing is a subjective thing, the whole idea of value pricing is also subjective. So in a way, a lot of the stuff that we spoke about at the beginning of this series about the requirement to remove ambiguity and remove uncertainty, the process of getting to a value price is full of ambiguity and full of uncertainty. So in a way, it kind of contradicts a lot of what the kind of benefit was of kind of time, even if it kind of pays back at the other way around. One of the references I just made kind of note on LinkedIn when we were talking about promoting this morning, there was an old client of mine, and we were talking about this, and his quote was, value pricing is like the Middle East piece. Everybody wants it, but nobody has any idea how to get it. And that, that is the obstacle, essentially, is how do I do it? Is it worth the trouble? Is it worth the challenge? It feels difficult. It feels a struggle. Do I really believe that the gain is worth the cost of trying to do it?
To stretch, without getting too political, but to stretch a bit that analogy on Middle East piece. And Andy's asking if we use value pricing approach. We will answer that later. The challenge around that and this discussion around pricing is, I think it's because it's also there's something deeper involved here. There is a history involved. There's a conflict involved that can be really tricky, that complicates things. And when I think about get away from the politics thing because we don't want to go down that route, but in terms of this conversation, the subjectivity, your history, relationship, perceptions around value and how much you are allowed to earn is going to be a significant impact on how you work with value-based pricing. On the other thing that you were talking about there, in terms of like it can be much more profitable. I think on one hand, yes, from the supplier, I agree with you. We're on social media, Ben. We're supposed to be polarizing. We're supposed to say, this is the best way. This is how you do it. Every way is rubbish. Mm-hmm. Happy pricing is the only way to do it. But to back that up, yes, I think it can be incredibly profitable. These are the most profitable ways of pricing your work. But also, I believe it can be the most impactful. Mm-hmm. Not impactful because, impactful in the way that you can work with the clients who need the outcome that you're going to create the most. And you are mm-hmm. able to then make a conscious decision whether to work with someone or not based on how much they're going to pay you, but based on whether you believe that your work is going to be the most value to them. Mm-hmm. And so rather than you trying to find, flog stuff to people who just might not care or might not even understand whether they care or not, you are actually hunting. And this is kind of the end of the line of after a longer journey of marketing and telling the story of your work and finding the people, there's a broader context that all of this is in. So the reason why I call it the best is because it should be, and it needs to be, a massive win for not only yourself, but your customer. Just because I spend 5 minutes with someone doesn't necessarily mean I can't be paid a couple of £100 if, for that person, it makes a massive shift. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, the Middle East analogy there, if there's a belief mm-hmm. that actually that's not allowed or that's not possible or money is a certain way, then you won't be able to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that's one of the massive roadblocks around taking this value-based approach is whether you believe it's allowed because of what you think it means. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And for sure, like we were making sort of a joke earlier, or relative joke, it's all things relative, not that funny, but talking about the kind of the list of things to talk about in future episodes. Of course, this thing around the beliefs, the stories that we have around money, is kind of unavoidable. It is brought to bear on every one of our conversations around selling. It's brought to bear on every one of our conversations around money and pricing and all of these things. We can't, in many respects, in many instances, we can't help but kind of bring these sort of stories, which are often quite limiting stories, to the conversations that we have around money. But and the thing that I sort of like that you were sort of pointing to, of course, is it is about kind of impactful work. As soon as we get out of the idea that this is, as you're suggesting, getting out of the idea that this is just about money or profit or pricing, essentially all of this is about, the more time we can spend understanding our clients or our customers' intent, their motivation, the thing that they want to change. Whenever somebody buys anything, it's because they want something to change. And we on the course, on the program, talk about clients only buying two things. They're buying good feelings and they're buying solutions to problems. And how badly they want those good feelings, how badly they want that problem solved. This is the kind of the source material for how useful you are. And if we kind of remove the kind of just words of kind of money and profit for a minute, and we talk about impact, and we talk about how useful you are, and you talk about how big a problem that you are solving for your client through bringing to bear your expertise or your products or your services, the more that we kind of do that, and the more that we try and find this kind of sort of symbiotic place, where the clients and customers have these problems that they wanting solving, they have these good feelings that they want, and you have you with your products and services. And like I said, the kind of more symbiotic that is, the more kind of in alignment that is, the more kind of your product service are connected to that impact. That is where the kind of goodness happens. That is where usefulness is. That is where impact is. And the more impact there is, the more useful you are, the exchange with that can be a monetary one, can be a financial one. So it starts to kind of trickle back into pricing when we kind of spend the time to understand that. And again, to kind of point into kind of pros, cons, like we've been doing through this whole series, of course, that takes more time and it takes more risk and it takes a bit more effort. But, the fruit, if you like, is you are almost exclusive or solely oriented to the impact that the client, your customer, wants. And the more you are in that place, the more useful you will be. And like we say, there is then the kind of trickle down benefit that has a monetary payback oftentimes.
Brilliant. Excellent. I want to maybe jump on a couple of questions here because I think it'll inform more of where we're going to go, where we're going with this conversation.
Jump on them.
So firstly, this is a crunchy one. Do you use value pricing? This is from Andy.
Me?
Yeah.
So in some of my work, yeah, I do. I think the thing that I do, so with kind of programs I do, we can talk about this in terms of how it kind of translates to selling a program. So where there's sort of one-to-one work that I will do with people who run businesses, and do I use value pricing in this, in the simplistic sense of, your business, you're selling whatever sales of a few million and you're trying to make changes to get to there. Am I saying, well, if we make that change, then you're going to pay me a proportion of that? No, it's not that sort of simplistic or that sort of, that's a hammer sign. I don't know what I've done. It's kind of blunt, whatever, you know what I mean?
Instrument.
But when I'm putting those kind of programs together, do I spend a lot of time really understanding all of the things that I was just talking about there in terms of the kind of good feelings and in terms of the kind of problems they want solving, and trying to understand what the kind of cost of not changing is for the client, and use that to help inform a kind of price, yeah, absolutely. So it's not kind of priced by time. There's kind of a whole range of factors which I sort of take into consideration, some of which is what I know I need to kind of generate for my own cash flow purposes. But then it's very much kind of rooted to and anchoring towards, well, what is the kind of cost of the change that the client is wanting to make? And so I use all of those techniques wherever possible. But again, like we said, through the whole of these series, there's pros and cons to each of these. And there's some instances where a client or a customer has a fixed thing about what it is that they are really able to spend within the kind of parameters that there's always kind of room for ambiguity around that. But, you've got to be open-minded and kind of be flexible. I know that there are these tools to use where I can. Equally, I know there are other instances for other reasons where a client or a customer has a certain set of expectations. And that means you need to go a kind of another route. And then kind of pricing and selling a course, for example, is a whole different thing. And so the question is also kind of relevant to that.
Nice one, Ben. And what made me think there is actually, Andy, the way I think about value-based pricing is not a tactical strategy for me. It's a mindset and a philosophy. It's a way of tackling.
Boom. That is social media right there.
Get the t-shirt, check it out on Instagram. You can have a lovely font and a beautiful background. And the reason why I say that is I don't practice it half as much as I'd like. And there's two things around that. I think first, I think value pricing, two pillars that come into mind is confidence and compassion. Confidence, because you really need to be confident in your own skills and the outcomes you can create, and confident that you're talking to the right person. But the second one, the compassion, is like, not everyone is able to work with money in the way that you are working with money. Not everyone is able to stretch. Someone, you might be able to say, like I said before, if you said, I can help you, it'll cost you 500 quid and it'll be 5 minutes of my time. Most people will run a mile. They're not at that level of understanding that that's a fair exchange, or believing that's a fair exchange. And you could probably get them there, but from a pragmatic point of view, that might be a year's worth of conversations. There's, depending on who you're talking to, this approach of really talking about value-based pricing, being honest and transparent about your needs, what you need to run a business, what you need to feel confident about working with someone, what you need in terms of the energetic aspect of the work, and what they really need in terms of the shift, the change they're working, not the amount of hours that you're needing to buy or that you're needing to work. I think when you can have two people who can have that really good conversation, then boom, that's, as well as the ideal aspects of how you have, use the strategies, it also requires the right people to be able to have those conversations. And so as a provider, if you want to work with this, I think your job is also to start, in whatever way you can, educating your clients about how to think about the value of what they're trying to create. They're trying to create for themselves by working with others. So I would like to say I don't use it often as much as I like, but it's because I don't think as a society we're as comfortable generally to work like that. We want much more clear, simple, objective rules about how much money we need to pay, because it's hard to think like that. It takes a lot more processing power and creates, for some people, too much uncertainty. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Andy. I don't know, anything else for you, Ben, while I was having that monologue?
No, I think the thing around trust, there's two things actually in what you were saying that sort of resonate. One, the importance of trust, clearly hugely important. And the other is who is buying. And so, these things have a hugely material kind of impact on the value, because, are you talking to somebody who is spending their own money? Are you talking to somebody who's spending the money of a company, i.e., so it's not coming out of their own pocket? Are you talking, if it's the latter, are they just administering somebody else's budget? Are they responsible for budget? Are they responsible for kind of increasing the value? Who you're talking to has a hugely kind of significant bearing on what the value of the work is. And so that, that is a kind of unavoidable thing, which would influence how you price something and what the value of something is. But yeah, and then importantly, like you're saying, this thing around kind of trust, because the more trust there is, the more comfortable someone is going to be engaging in the type of dialogue that you were just sort of talking to there. And that of course is slowly earned.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing that you picked up on the trust thing, because anyone who just focuses on pricing and strategies around pricing and selling without an awareness or any kind of broader view on the marketing and why do they care about the people that they're selling to, then I think that's going to create more effort and more challenges for you, particularly if you're someone who actually does care, and if you are kind of someone who feels like they need to be authentic and ethical in the way they work. There's an element here of people will trust you if you have that energy around you. If you've got that nervousness of like, oh, am I allowed to pay, charge this? Oh, do I really want to work with this person? Or do I really believe in helping this person and getting them to where they want to get to? I believe that really leaks out in a conversation and in the energy of that interaction, unless, like I remember a conversation with Tad Hargrave on marketing, you are a sociopath. You can really just like detach and just like you're there. And then, there are people in the world who are very good at just like being able to, as they say, sell snow to Eskimos. But I think most people who follow us, who are in our world of doing the kind of way we want to do business, we are a bit more sensitive to how other people relate to us. And so we want to make sure that we come across in the most authentic way and still make a sustainable, profitable, valuable business.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, for me, it's important to stress why we talk about it as opposed to how other people might talk about it.
Yeah. And again, because of that, what you're saying there kind of links back to what we were talking about earlier, is the kind of the need, the responsibility and the opportunity with all of this is about being out of our own shoes, our own skin, and into, metaphorically speaking, the shoes and skin of the person who's buying the thing that we do. Because the more oriented we are towards that, the more that we understand that, the more that we are rooted in that, in everything that's going on over on that side of the table rather than this side of the table, the more useful we can be, the more impactful we can be. And then there is the kind of monetary exchange, as part of that sequence.
And on that as well, and the quicker you'll be able to say, this customer isn't for me. The more you're able to understand their worldview and see where they're trying to get to and where you want to get to, the less time you can waste. Why convince someone who isn't at that stage ready, or at that level of clarity or level of commitment? Because ultimately, how much you pay is also a signal of the commitment you have to the outcome. So if you see someone who's really hesitant, really not, or ultimately not clear, they don't know what they want, then you have to make a decision. It's like, do you want to spend time helping them get to that clarity? And if so, how much is that worth to you and them? So yeah, it really broadens out when we start thinking about value-based pricing to just selling sort of widgets on the shelf to actually a bit more of a deeper psychology, really. And that's what it comes down to. And a final thing on that, and your own psychology, which I think is that's the thing I love. That's the exciting stuff. Like, what's really driving me when I think about this stuff when I'm trying to work with people. Just a quick one. We've got a lovely question by Dave. What was the last value-based business purchase you made and why?
Ooh. The last value-based business purchase I made. So what was the last time someone... good question. Good question.
I have a quick story.
Okay.
It's, a couple of years ago, actually last year, actually. Man, the year feels like 10 at the moment. It's trans-pandemic, I think it was the time.
Trans-pandemic?
I think we are still in pandemic. I'm pandemic fluid. Sorry, really bad joke. We are. I was. Yeah, there's a guy, a lovely guy we know who was part of our community, Charles Davies. He was doing a course called Clarity for Teachers. And Charles is kind of, he was one of the first people who taught me about this money stuff. And so in classic Charlie way, is like, do you want to join this course? Yes. Why do you want to do it? What's important to you? And then went through all of that. And then how much do you want to pay for it? I have no idea. Throw me a bone. I have no idea. And so he started throwing numbers at me. Some people pay this, some people pay that. And I came to I won't say that figure now, but at the same time, I came to a figure, and I had to commit to it, and it was really difficult and it was challenging because it wasn't. I wasn't able to really tie it to a financial return. I could only tie it to what felt right and what I wanted to do then. And I paid the number, and actually thinking back, and Charlie's going to love this, I should go back to him and pay him more. Because and this is the interesting thing about that. The benefit of that I think it's only come out maybe a couple of years afterwards. And this is the really curious thing about, I think, really true, if we're going to go orthodox value-based pricing, there is something around.
We need bigger beards.
We need bigger beards. There's potential, if you're doing really impactful work, that value, and this is the thing that Ben talks about a lot on the course, is something you will be benefiting from again and again. And as a customer, if you're able to get people to understand how many times they're going to benefit from the value of you working with them, then you start framing again how much money that could turn into. So anyway, that's what I remember. And I remember from a customer point of view, it was challenging. And that's why I say I found it hard to think about how to interact with, all right, how much is it really worth? And I needed more guidance because I was still not at that level to really just say, I confidently want to pay X thousands of pounds because this is how much I believe it's worth.
Yeah. And I think there's a few things in there. One, I think the just pay what you want is a very, very difficult thing for people to work out. Going back to the thing we're talking about kind of ambiguity and uncertainty. I part own a platform that provides meditation teachings, and there's a whole load of free stuff, and there are courses. And for the courses, we tried for a bit to do pay what you want. And actually, it was really difficult for people to buy. And as soon as we put some structure around that, it significantly increased the number of people who were buying. So I think there's a thing around that. The only other thing around the value-based purchases that I could think of, which was not a business purchase, but we've spoken about on here before, is buying very expensive gin and tonics near the beach. So there is some value in that, but they are expensive.
Yeah. And then I think that for me is just a microcosm of the stuff that we talk about when it comes to value-based pricing, because it isn't just about the product you're buying. It's about the experience. It's about this, the memory. It's about, like Ben was saying, there's the good feelings. And there is, there's some really creative work around this, around really understanding and painting a picture of what it is that the customer is looking for and will actually feel. Because I think there's what is the experience of working with you? Is that of value to that person? David Papper was talking about making people feel uncomfortable when they asking them to choose their price. But I think also, on the one hand, it can be a bit challenging there, and then you might have to help them. But also, I know working with David, I love being with David. David's got an amazing energy around him. And so to certain people, just being around David is more valuable than being around any other coach. And actually understanding that and getting away from this idea of a market rate or an objective rate that all coaches, all web developers, all designers need to be paid X amount an hour. I think that's something to fight against. And I think that's something that Geraldine was commenting about, really, in terms of dynamic pricing and the industry average, and how that affects, again, your client's perception, and talks to your thing about getting into their head. Sorry, off a tangent there.
Good tangents. Now, what I would say is when we run the program, and if anybody's interested in it, do press the green button. We are notoriously bad at timekeeping.
That's true. That's true. And thank you for reminding me. And one of the reasons we were going to do this on a Wednesday morning before Action Cafe, which is another online meeting that I do, is that we could do it in half an hour and we're off and done, and there's a hard limit. We have gone over time, so we're going to finish off very quickly now. I think, Ben, can you do a quick summary in terms of things people need to think about when it comes to value-based pricing, just to underline and just give people just a full stop as to, okay, this is what I need to go away with.
Okay, so I'm going to fudge this a little bit conveniently. So I guess the most important thing is that I've just referenced back what you introduced and what we're talking about, that really this is as much as possible about walking in the shoes of your client and customer. So really taking the time to explore and understand what their motivations are, the things that they want to change, the problems that they want to solve, and the good feelings that they are buying through being with you. The more that you can do that, and I'd imagine lots of people who are kind of listening in this community are coaches, so actually they have the tools and the skills to be able to kind of uncover those kind of nuggets of wisdom. The kind of other sort of slight fudge is next week we're going to talk about the 5 T's of pricing, which is basically all of the different things that you can sort of use to kind of play with different aspects of price. And a lot of the things in that will be things which kind of point to how people might explore and play around with different price levels. So it's not a hard stop or a full stop. It's a colon.
A bridge.
It's a bridge. It's a bridge to next Wednesday.
And you've introduced the 6T, the teaser. Thank you very much, Ben. So yeah, next Wednesday, this time, this place, we'll be talking about the 5 T's to pricing well. So until then, thank you very much, Ben. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers, Dave, Geraldine, and David. Thanks, Andy, for your questions. Thanks, Tristan and Nick, for joining in. Hope to see you again next week. And yeah, if you didn't catch the beginning, this is available on the recording on this link within 5 minutes of us finishing. And also we'll be putting it on the podcast, Waking Up to Money. You can find that on Apple and Spotify. And we have a YouTube channel. If you just, again, search for Waking Up to Money, you'll be able to find all the recordings from this season and the past 3 seasons now. We're in season 4. It's amazing.
Or press green.
Press green, and that's another quick way to find out more about this stuff. Until next time, take care. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.